冰岛熔岩秀，熔岩会经由坡道流出来，坡道的特别在这边有放冰块，模拟熔岩流经冰岛冰层的感觉。一个梯次约莫50分钟左右。
Okay, so what you are seeing here, all of these bubbles, that's our block of ice underneath the lava. Now, that ice is turning into steam and rapidly expanding, bursting its way up through this very, very fluid lava flow in the form of a very small steam explosion. It's very similar to what we experience at subglacial eruptions in Iceland, similar to what we had in 2010 back at Eyjafjallajökull as well. Now, has anyone also heard of the formation called Pellé's hair? That is all these thin strands and filaments of lava which form as the lava flows over an edge. It then gets picked up by the wind and carried far from the vent of a volcano. It gets stretched out into these incredibly thin formations that are quite rare in volcanic environments because the volcanoes are very, very destructive. As you can see there, they tend to cool quite quickly. So yeah, volcanologists absolutely love when they find these formations. They are named after a Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes. Her name is Pele. But in Iceland there is no such goddess of volcanoes. So instead they get the name Nornahau, or witch's hair. You saw those bubbles forming when I had that block of ice underneath the lava. I now have with me a second block of ice. I will just pop that on the surface there. Let's see what happens. But firstly, a lot of that steam, it rises straight off of the lava flow. The lava will start to darken in certain areas, but some of the steam will get injected inside of the lava flow. So you can see here, they're getting a bit of a bulging going on. That's all of that steam collecting and building up inside. Now our lava flow is starting to solidify on the surface, and so it's making it much harder for that steam to push through. So instead, we get much bigger bubbles forming in this sort of big bulge on our lava flow here. We also have a nice bubble in here as well. I can actually break through that. Let's see if I can pull out some of that lava. You can see it's still very, very liquid inside there. It will stay liquid for quite some time. This is because the lava is now starting to insulate itself. This means it's starting to trap the heat within itself, keep everything nice and hot inside, especially in the areas here which are being covered with this nice crusty area, this nice sort of skin layer on top. It's actually trapping the heat inside. We also have solid lava in the form of that basalt tephra underneath that exploded lava. So that actually means I can get underneath the lava flow here. I can give it a bit of a lift up. As you can see there, our lava is still nice and liquid inside. It remains flowing away and sort of cooling down the bottom there. Now, when we have lava flowing in a nice river or channel, we tend to get formations called lava tubes and lava tunnels that form. This is when we have that channel, the surface will start to solidify, as you can see here. The underside will also solidify, and each side. It will form a bit of a pipe, or a tube, as I said. That liquid lava will remain flowing inside under the force of gravity, but eventually the volcano will stop erupting. All of that liquid lava that's traveling inside will eventually drain out. And then you'll get a nice hollow tube, which you can then go and walk inside. So it will take many thousands of years for these to cool down enough to go and take a walk inside. But they are incredibly impressive if you do go and have a look. There are a few around Iceland as well. Just to show off that insulation, let me lift up this layer here. Let's see what's going on inside. You can see that lava is still very, very liquid. It's still over 1,000 degrees Celsius actually. It's got that lovely golden yellowy color it's telling me. Let me also come over to the other side. Let's try and lift that up as well. And he does it. It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? So yes, this is all about lava being kept nice and hot inside because of that semi-solid layer on the top. Now you can see our lava is also starting to change in its texture a little bit. It's no longer making those lovely Pellé's hairs like I had earlier. It's actually a lot stickier. It's a lot harder to maneuver and pull it out. This is because it's liquid but not really solid yet. So it's quite sticky at this point. You can see I can pull out little pieces. It'll actually cool down very, very rapidly when I bring a piece up into the air. You can see that it becomes much more difficult for me to maneuver the lava. The thin pieces, they tend to solidify quite quickly. They just snap back down. So our lava is dropping below about 900 degrees Celsius. This is the temperature in which it starts to undergo this solidification process. You can also see the stick is also nice and red hot. It's taken on a lot of that heat from that lava flow. Once again, if I come around this side, let's see if I can get a piece up here as well. There we go. You can see just how it makes it quite hard for me to pull it off. But I have managed to today. We usually have to resort to the second stick, but it's behaved itself for now, which is nice. So you can also start to hear a bit of a crackling and popping noise coming from our lava flow. This is it starting to cool down. So it probably sounds a little bit like Rice Krispies popping in a nice bowl of milk at the moment. I can assure you it will get louder as the show continues. Now, our lava flow kind of behaves a bit weird when it cools down. So you're probably thinking of a liquid turning into a solid. You're probably thinking of water turning into ice. When water turns into ice, it actually expands. It takes up more space. But lava behaves differently. It will actually contract. It will shrink in on itself, especially in the parts which are cooling down very, very rapidly. And so since we have a steel slide underneath here, we have that cooling process happening very, very fast because the steel is a great conductor of heat. It draws the heat away from the lava. So we get the most cooling in this section, and we also have a lot of pressure. So little pieces start to crack, snap, fracture, and break apart. And so that's why I'm putting these grates on, because I am stood so close to this thing. I don't want to get hit in the face. So I'm reckoning you're all feeling the heat a little bit now. You all feel it, it's filling the room up. I have a little bit of a visual aid just to show you that lava's hot, just to prove to your friends and family back home. I've got a couple of pieces of tissue paper. So as you can see, they almost instantly catch on fire. So if this was your shoes and you were taking a nice walk on our lava flow, it wouldn't be lasting very long. And that would be the rest of you as well. So not the best thing to do, walking on lava. And now you can see some of that glow is starting to fade away. So I will bring up the light so we can start to see a bit of a surface textures going on here. There we go. It's popping a lot in this area, so that's proving why we need those. And it's nice and shiny now, so I will get onto why it is so shiny. But firstly, I have a bit more of a scientific method of telling you that lava is hot, of course. I have a nice temperature gun with me, and don't worry, for any Americans in the room, it does have Fahrenheit. So you're all in safe hands. We also have Celsius too. So firstly, I'll check out the area where I put the ice. It's probably the coolest part of our lava flow. The lava was at 1,100 degrees Celsius when it first flowed into the room, around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That area is now reading at 511 degrees Celsius. That is 952 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's lost about half of its heat. It's actually dropped below 600 degrees Celsius, which is the minimum temperature in which lava emits any sort of light. So we don't actually see nice bright orange glow in this area. If I came to an area which was having a nice bright orange glow, let me check down in this section, we're now getting a temperature of exactly 600 degrees Celsius. That's 1,112 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are having a big difference in our lava flow here in terms of temperature. If I check out this area down here as well, it's being nicely covered up by a solid piece of lava. That's reading at 670 degrees Celsius, 1,239 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can imagine our lava flows kind of like big jam or jelly donuts. Nice and crispy on the outside, but the inside, it still remains nice and liquid. So with more coverage on top, the more liquid the inside will be and for longer. So it takes quite a long time for lava flows in nature to cool down. It takes maybe about 50 to 100 years. So I mentioned earlier that our lava flow is now quite nice and shiny. So I will start to make some noises that you may be able to associate with the shine. Let me know if you hear anything. Sounds familiar. Sounds like shattered glass, exactly. That is now what we have made. We have made something called volcanic glass. Now, volcanic glass does form in nature under some very specific conditions. It's when we have lava, and it has to be lava, but it cools down incredibly rapidly. It cools down so fast, in fact, that all of the elements on the inside, they're trying to form a solid structure. It's happening way too quickly that they're in a bit of a panic. They don't know what's happening. So instead of forming any strong bonds, they will just grab onto whatever is next to them, which is whatever is most available and most abundant in the lava. Inside our basaltic lava flow, that is something called silica. Silica is a molecule which makes up about 47% of the composition of this lava flow. And so when everything bonds to that silica, everything starts to look just like that silica. And would you have it, silica is also one of the main components in man-made glass. And so that's why our lava starts to look nice and shiny, nice and glassy, if you will. And it also sounds a lot like breaking glass as well. It's all about silica trapped inside, everything's bonded to it, everything looks just like it as well. But lava, of course, is different. It's a natural thing. So we have other different features of it. So if I maybe take a piece of these bubbles here, if I grab a tiny thin piece, you'll see here it's very, very thin. I can still feel the heat through my glove actually, even though it's so thin. But this bubble is a nice dark grey to black colour. You can't see through it at all. This is because we have lots of other things inside of our lava. It's a big old natural soup of elements. We also have about 15% iron, about 13% aluminium, magnesium, calcium, titanium as well. The list goes on and on and on. And then all these heavy metal elements are what causes our lava to be nice and dark in colour. And so if you wanted to stretch this out and make a glass pane out of it, you wouldn't be able to see through it at all. It wouldn't make a very good window. Also, having less silica in our lava means that it is quite weak. We only have about 47% silica in here. In your traditional window, you have about 70%. And so if you gave it a knock, you wouldn't actually make a nice sound. Instead, you just break it all apart. So I can actually see what's going on inside of the lava flow there. I have made a couple of little lava tubes inside. So I can try and leave these to the side for afterwards so you can see. This is where the lava drained out when I lifted that section up. And so this is exactly what I was describing. You have that solid outside, that nice pipe which the lava travels through, and it all just drains out. It gets taken away by the gravity if the volcano being our furnace, stops erupting. And so we get a nice cavity which you can go and walk inside. Let's try and break off this piece as well. Cut that in half. You can see how easy it is to just break the lava apart. Let's have a look inside there. Once again, you can see it's nice and orange inside. We've got that lovely dark crust on the outside as well. So these lava tubes and lava tunnels are incredibly fascinating. They can transport lava many tens of kilometers away from the vent of the volcano. You can actually go quite disguised. You can't see them from the surface of a lava field. And so you get quite surprised when the lava just starts flowing out further down the valley. So definitely something which scientists have to look out for when monitoring a volcanic eruption. Let's see as well if I can break up this quite large chunky piece. There we go, I've got a nice red bit there, but I want to get a piece with some nice orange as well. Let's see if I can break off a piece from here. There we go. Takes a little bit more force for that piece because it is a lot thicker. But I managed to break some. Let's see if we can lift it up. There we go. We do have Some really hot lava inside there still. This will remain hot in the showroom for about 12 hours, this section down the bottom. The slide section maybe about 6 hours, but if I left it, if I didn't put air and ice into it, it would actually take 2 days to fully cool down. So this was a little experiment which Julius, one of our founders, did during COVID. Wanted to check out how long our lava really took to cool down. Now, as I'm walking around this lava piece in the room, I do tend to get a little bit hungry at this time in the show. It starts to look a little bit like a nice medium rare steak. Would you all agree? Yes. Now, as I'm waving it around, that area which is glowing, it will start to fade away. As I'm introducing the air into it, I'm sort of waving it around, cooling it down really fast. So definitely will start to look a little bit more well done by the time I'm finished, and dropping it back down on this side here. Let's drop that down. So I will now draw your attention further up here. This area has now stopped popping, thankfully. So let's lift this grate up here. Let's have a look at some of the texture on the top. Can all of you see this lovely ripple-shaped pattern on the top? You can maybe hear all of the ridges as the stick is being run over the top of them. All these U-shaped patterns. This is something called ropey pahoiho. So this happens when we have a really, really fast-moving river of lava. As I said earlier, we have lots of insulation going on. So the surface, it starts to cool down because it's in contact with the air, especially in Iceland. Our air here, pretty cold. So it forms a nice little skin layer on the top. It's sort of that semi-solid. It can still move, but it doesn't behave nice and liquid. This will then be dragged along by the really liquid layer underneath. And this will then start to bunch up into all of these U-shaped patterns, and it will just solidify like this. So if you are traveling around Iceland, you happen to go to maybe the national park with the big lake close by, or if you just happen to go to any other location in Iceland, I mean, the floor literally is lava here, you look down, find all of these lovely patterns. Do know you are walking where once a really fast-moving channel of lava was once flowing, usually many, many thousands of years old, so nothing to worry about. But really something quite nice to note that you are walking around where lava was flowing. Now, I will start to break the lava apart into much smaller pieces down into this puddle here. This helps with our cleanup process later on. So now is the time which I usually open up the floor to any questions. So if you do have any questions, do feel free to just yell them out at me. I cannot see a single face or hand in here. So just be sure to shout out any burning questions that you may have. I'll try to give them the best answer as possible as I start breaking this lava apart.
How does basalt how is it formed?
Great question. So how does basalt form? So basalt, it's our most common type of lava here in Iceland. So that forms usually from quite fast upwelling from in the mantle. So we have a few layers in the earth. So the mantle is below the crust. And so usually we have sort of direct sources which bring lava straight up. So when we have a hot spot and when we also have plates moving apart from each other, they usually allow pathways to form. And so this is where we mostly get basalt. So you get a lot of basalt near in Iceland. You also get it along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. You get it in Hawaii, other places with a hot spot as well. We do have other kinds of lava, but they tend to form when we have different melting going on, so a convergent plate boundary when one plate sinks below each other, or when we have magma that sits inside the very shallow crust for a long, long period of time. So this really changes all of our chemistry inside of a lava. It makes it behave differently. So we have this lovely basalt lava, which flows nice and smooth. But as you get more silica, as the lava sits inside the crust for much longer, things can get a lot stickier. And so it doesn't move as fast, and gases start to build up. This is where we get our more explosive type of volcanoes, which don't have ice involved. We only really get explosive eruptions here in Iceland where we have some ice interaction. This is with our glaciers as well.
Ash, is it fertile at all?
Yeah, great question. The ash, is it fertile at all? Yes. Ash is really, really fertile. It contains a lot of minerals and elements which are needed to sustain life, to grow plants. This is why you find a lot of civilizations built on the side of volcanoes. It's not because they choose to live alongside hazards for fun. They actually get a lot of their resources from that. The only difference with Iceland, though, and the reason why we don't have many crops here, is because our climate is not the most forgiving. Yes. Some of you may have experienced the lovely Icelandic weather outside today. Trust me, it gets colder. And so, yes, this doesn't sustain our plants as much. And so we only really tend to get a few small trees and some moss. It's not the best for growing things. Let's see if we can get underneath the lava flow one more time. Let's see just how hot it remains. There we go. You can see even towards the latter part of the show, everything is still toasty warm inside. Still definitely be able to fry a marshmallow or some steak or something inside there. Trust me, we have tried food here. We have had a few little food disasters. Popcorn is one of the best ones because it almost burnt the seats. Everything started flowing away, but we actually have some liquid lava still inside. I can actually poke the stick in and it's sinking, not sinking, but like pushing through the lava flow. Starting to drip out as well. That's quite fascinating there. Yeah. And so our lava, you could see at the bottom, we actually have a lot of that basalt, that tephra, which I mentioned earlier, that volcanic ash. Let's actually grab onto the stick there. But unfortunately, we weren't able to remelt that basalt tephra. As it came into the room, the lava was losing quite a lot of heat. And so it ended up just sort of sticking itself together. And so, yeah, it wasn't actually able to remelt. It's all the same material, but because we stick the two together, we can actually take this, put it into our furnace backstage again, and let lava flow again later on in the day. We can actually recycle this stuff. It's exactly like taking water, putting it into a freezer, turning it into ice, and taking it back out of the freezer again. So, quite interesting stuff. We're just doing it on a much more industrial scale with lumps of rock and also a massive great furnace, giant oven backstage. Let me see if I can break open where I sort of folded the lava. There's still some nice orange bits inside. I have with me another piece of tissue paper, of course I do. Who doesn't love a little bit of fire? As you can see, I made a little mini volcano there. So yes, still really, really hot to touch, to walk on, everything. Any final questions?
For a volcano to become extinct, what has actually happened to make that get to that stage?
Great question. So what has happened to make a volcano extinct? So across the world, it can vary. So in Iceland, for a volcano to go from being active to extinct, it hasn't experienced an eruption in the latest 10,000 years. Sometimes it's if the active site of the volcano moves away from whatever was causing magma to build up. So all the plates on Earth are slowly moving over a very, very long period of time, but they are slowly moving, and so it's kind of like a big conveyor belt. And so sometimes we get volcanoes which can sort of form and then move away, they become extinct, and we get a new volcano in its place. So they just sort of travel away. Yes, it's kind of weird to imagine, but yes, it's how we sort of see things working at the moment. Okay, I do see that my doors are open now, so that's my time to start wrapping things up. So I have a final fun fact before you all go. That is that you cannot sink in lava. Great news, I guess. So, bear with me for a second. So some of you may have seen some films or TV shows where someone's dramatically fallen into lava. They've like sunk down and drowned. So maybe thinking of Lord of the Rings, when Gollum falls into Mount Doom, for example. Sorry, spoiler alert. You've had 20 years. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I hate to burst your bubble, that is all a load of Hollywood. See, lava, it is liquid rock. It's 3 times denser or heavier than water. We, as humans, are mostly made up of water. So if you were in the very, very special circumstances to trip and fall into some lava, you would just splat onto the surface. Now you can take your mind back to the tissue paper as to what would happen next. I don't know if there's any kids in the room, so I don't want to freak anyone out. But yes, it wouldn't look too pretty for you. So if you wanted to make a suit which is much better than Neil's backstage, you're more than welcome to give it a try. You sort of bounce around on the surface. If you do try it, let me know. I'll stand on the side with a bowl of popcorn and I'll call it natural selection. So, yes, I'll just let that happen. But I guess the main takeaway here is if you are walking around in Iceland, our next volcanic eruption happens beneath your feet. Well, if you can't swim, at least you don't need to worry about drowning on the way down. Yeah, you might have a few other issues on your hands. At least drowning is not one of them, so that's great. But the lava is now completely solidified. It's very hard for me to play around for it, so that's all I have for you today. Did you enjoy yourselves? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now, if you did enjoy yourselves, we do appreciate Google and TripAdvisor reviews. So my name is Glenn. If you didn't enjoy, however, my name is Neil. So just drop his name in there. I will turn up the lights in just a few moments so you can see your ways out. Please keep those safety glasses on until you leave the showroom. There are buckets on the outside for you. I will also be waiting outside if you have any further questions. And just before I leave you all, please remember, don't touch the lava. Thank you very much for coming. Cheers.
回到节目开始前的些许重点提示，主持人会提到在眼前流动的温度大约是1100度，这不是模拟，也不是灯光效果，是真正的熔岩。接下来会自我介绍相关的背景，通常都是有着火山学、地质学，还有参加过一些的火山研究。另外会提及了相关的一个冰岛人的梦想，还有制作熔岩秀的灵感，都是来自于侏罗纪公园。熔岩开始流动前，就会提醒各位要务必戴上护目眼镜，全程最好都是戴好到结束以后。喜欢我的影片的朋友，记得帮我按下订阅哦。